Hidden deep in the Italian-speaking south of Switzerland, there is a valley where the modern world seems to stop at the edge of the rock walls. This is the Bavona Valley, and in the middle of an ancient rockslide lies one of its smallest and most extraordinary villages, Sonlerto. Here, stone is everywhere. Houses, paths, and animal shelters are pressed between enormous boulders that thundered down from the cliffs centuries ago. People learned to live around the rocks, carving small shelters under them, building tall, narrow homes to save every patch of grass and creating hanging meadows on the slopes above. The Bavona River itself roars past the village, a constant soundtrack of meltwater and stone. In this video, we walk through Sonlerto and its landscape of stone and water to discover how life can still follow the rhythm of the mountains. Hidden in the far end of a steep-side valley of Ticino, there is a place where the modern world feels very far away. This is Val Bavona, one of the wildest valleys in the Swiss Alps, and at its heart lies a tiny stone village that seems almost suspended in time. Welcome to Sonlerto. As our walk begins, look at how the road suddenly opens into a wide meadow framed by vertical rock walls. The Bavona River flashes below us, cold and clear, rushing over boulders that have tumbled down from the cliffs for thousands of years. Ahead, Sonlerto appears as a cluster of grey stone roofs and chimneys scattered between enormous rocks in the middle of this high mountain pasture. As we follow the lane toward the first houses of Sonlerto, notice how everything here is built in stone. The paths beneath our feet, the terrace walls, the barns, stables and homes, even the roofs, all come from the same local rock. The village sits on the debris of an ancient landslide. Centuries ago, people squeezed their houses between these giant blocks to keep as much flat grassland as possible for animals and hay. In this wide section of the valley, pasture was precious, so every available patch of soil was protected. Look closely at some of the buildings. Many houses lean directly against a boulder, using the rock as a back wall or even as a natural roof. Under the most dramatic stones, you may see low doorways and little shelters carved into the shade. These are traditional shelters that offered storage space, places for animals, or emergency refuge during storms and avalanches. By building into and under the rocks, families saved timber and gained extra protection without wasting land. From here, it is hard to imagine that the busy lakeside streets of Locarno and Ascona are only an hour away by road or bus. Yet, that contrast is exactly what defines this place. Sonlerto belongs to the municipality of Sivio, in the Italian-speaking part of Switzerland, but its daily rhythm has always been that of an isolated mountain community. The valley you see around the hamlet is steep and deeply incised, a classic glacial trough carved and then cut further by the Bavona River. A single road winds up the valley from Cavino, passing a chain of hamlets with names like Fontana, Mondada, Sabbione, Foroglio, Rosito and San Carlo, before the mountains close completely. Sonlerto sits roughly in the middle of this chain, a tiny stone punctuation mark between cliffs and sky. The climate here is a mountain variation of Ticino, usually mild, almost Mediterranean weather. Summers are often warm by day, with bright sun on the cliffs, but the evenings cool quickly, and afternoon thunderstorms can rush through the valley. Winters at this altitude bring snow and ice, and the shaded gorge collects cold air. The slopes above the hamlet receive heavy snowfall, and avalanches are an ever-present risk, which is one reason why the meadows and buildings are positioned exactly where they are. The open glades around Sonlerto act as a buffer, allowing snow to settle before it reaches the houses. The typical house here is called a rustico. It is usually a compact, almost cube-shaped construction. Thick stone walls keep heat inside in winter and maintain cool air in summer. Narrow wooden doors and small windows face the sun. Roofs are covered with flat stone slabs that can weigh many tons, held in place only by their own weight. Inside, the lower level was often for animals and storage, while the family lived and slept above the warm stable. Today, some of these houses are carefully restored holiday cottages, while others remain exactly as they were left by previous generations. As we continue through the village, listen to the sound of water. Small channels run along the path and stone fountains stand at the corners. For centuries, water and gravity were the engines of life in this valley. Streams turned mills, irrigated hay meadows, and supplied drinking water for people and animals. Above Sonlerto and in the upper Bavona, huge dams now capture this same water to power turbines that send electricity out to the rest of Switzerland, while the villages below remain almost entirely off-grid. The story begins in the Middle Ages. Archaeological and written evidence suggest that people started to settle Val Bavona around the 11th century, carving fields and pastures out of the forest. By the 13th and 14th centuries, small villages like Ferruglio and Sonlerto had stable populations living there all year. Life revolved around goats and cattle, chestnut, groves and patches of rye, with families moving their herds higher in summer and back down to the valley floor in winter. Each household would have had a few small plots at a lower altitude and then summer huts or seasonal houses higher up, so that the animals could follow the grass as it ripened. But life in such a steep valley came with a price. Over time, deforestation for firewood and grazing destabilized the slopes. In the late 16th and early 17th centuries, a series of severe floods, rockfalls and avalanches tore through the valley. Fields were buried, watercourses were diverted, and several hamlets suffered serious damage. Little by little, it became impossible for most families to live here all year. People moved their permanent homes down to Cavano and Bignasco at the entrance of Val Bavona, keeping their high valley houses for seasonal use. Sonlerto and its neighbours became mostly summer abodes used from late spring to autumn, while the valley floor in Valle Maggia became their winter base. This pattern shaped everything. From late April or May, families would walk up with their animals, open the houses, repair walls and roofs, and plant small gardens. Children would spend the summer between school holidays haymacking and helping in the chestnut woods. In September and October, before the first serious snow, everyone would move down again, leaving the hamlets quiet and snowbound. That seasonal rhythm, known across the Alps as transhumance, is still visible in the way the buildings are organised. Many of these stone cottages you see around you began life as part of that seasonal cycle. As we walk gently up through the village, look out for a small wooden structure raised on stone pillars, with a steep little staircase climbing to its door. This is one of Val Bavona's treasures, a rye granary called a torba. It stands raised above the damp ground on stone mushrooms to protect the harvest from mice and moisture. In Sonlerto, the torba dates from the late 15th and 16th centuries. Dendrochronology, the study of tree rings, shows that some of its beams were cut in the 1490s, and the building itself was completed shortly after the year 1590. Walk a little further and you will notice that Sonlerto does not have a dense, tight core like a typical alpine village. The houses are spread across the meadow, threaded together by footpaths and stone walls. That spacing reflects the constant negotiation between rock, water and pasture. Floods from the Bavona River, avalanches from the walls above, and the need for hay all influenced where each house stands. This whole settlement is almost like a puzzle that had to be solved with stone and grass, as the only pieces available. At the centre of Sonlerto stands a small whitewashed chapel. This is the oratory of Ganarienti, built in the 16th century as a place of worship and protection for the community that lived and worked in this remote high valley. Inside, simple frescoes and votive offerings tell of the deep relationship between faith and survival in an environment where rockfalls, storms and poverty were constant threats. As our walk continues, pay attention to the details of daily life, present and past, that still appear at every corner. Wooden ladders lean against haylofts. Old iron tools hang on beams. Bread ovens and stone benches sit in tiny communal spaces between the houses. In summer, when families return for the holidays, shutters open. Smoke rises lightly from chimneys and children play on the grass between cows and goats. For a few warm months each year, Sonlerto is no longer a museum of stone, but a living village again. Sonlerto and the other hamlets of Val Bavona are not frozen museum pieces. They are part of a living cultural landscape that continues to evolve. Renovated stone cottages now welcome hikers and guests who want to spend a night or a week away from constant connectivity. Local families still return to cut hay, maintain paths and roofs, and keep traditions alive. The valley has become a symbol of a different possible relationship between people, technology, and nature in modern Switzerland. Take a moment to notice how Sonlerto blends into the pasture. The stone houses almost disappear among the rocks once you step a little away. This was always the idea, to build in such a way that human presence did not dominate the valley, but coexisted with it. Houses, barns, walks and walls were designed to work with the landscape rather than to erase it. From Sonlerto, hiking paths lead both along the valley floor and up the steep flanks. The main path through Val Bavona forms part of a regional long-distance route, linking Bignasco at the entrance of the valley with San Carlo at the top. Walkers can cross meadows, pass through several stone hamlets, and cover the length of the valley in a day, always accompanied by the river and the vertical walls. Sonlerto lies at one of the few places where the valley opens slightly, making it a natural pause on this journey. Higher above, paths climb through chestnut woods and over old stone steps to reach alpine pastures, and eventually the high basin of the Bassadino region and the Robier area with its dams and lakes. From up there, you can look back down at the ribbon of Val Bavona and see how small Sonlerto appears, a cluster of roofs surrounded by huge geological forces. Yet, what draws many visitors here is not only the landscape, but the atmosphere. Walking through Sonlerto, you feel the weight of time in the stones, but you also feel an unusual quiet. There is almost no mechanical sound, no constant hum of electricity, no neon or advertising. Instead, there is water, wind, cowbells, the creak of wood, and the occasional voice carried from one yard to another. It is a very simple soundscape. And that simplicity is part of the valley's identity. Just beside the village, in a wide grassy garden between cliff and river, you find Mate Waimoka. It looks at first like a simple mountain house with tables scattered under the trees. But it is actually one of the most unusual spots in the valley. The entire place works on a self-service idea. There is no busy bar counter and no constant waiter rushing from table to table. Instead, you walk in, choose what you want, note your consumption and pay honestly, often using the box and payment details left out for guests. That freedom to help yourself and then simply linger is part of the charm. The garden is open all day, so people can relax at any hour, whether they arrive early in the morning for a quiet coffee or in the late afternoon after a long climb. Mate Waimoka calls itself a timeless space. Here you can pour yourself a coffee, take an ice cream from the freezer, open a bottle of local wine or a craft beer from the fridge, and then sit wherever you like in the garden. Shelves and fridges are filled with simple mountain food and drinks. There are biscuits and chocolate bars for tired hikers, cheeses from nearby farms, and jars of local honey. For our journey through Sonlerto, Mate Waimoka was the perfect closing chapter. Stone houses, river, forest, boulders. And finally, this relaxed garden where you can pour a drink, open a packet of biscuits and simply be still for a while. If you come to Val Bavona, do not rush past it. Step into the garden, try something from the self-service shelves and let the valley slow you down for an hour. Thank you for joining this journey through Sonlerto. If you enjoyed discovering this hidden corner of Switzerland, consider subscribing to the channel, leaving a comment about your favourite moment in the village, and sharing this video with someone who loves remote mountain places. See you in the next video.